a story that I thought was timely, or just you could maybe speak to, is this article from Bloomberg that came out on July 21st, so yesterday of recording this podcast. And basically, the title is How YouTube is Shaping a New Generation of Chefs. And the subtext is in kitchens around the world, chefs are turning to YouTube to learn new skills and establish their culinary reputations. And they start with this example of James Lowe, the London-based chef who'd made Lyle's one of the best UK restaurants. Um, so basically, he goes on to say how he kind of needed help because he had never butchered a bluefin tuna. Basically, he went ahead and learned on YouTube how to do it, and he used YouTube as a way to teach not only himself but his staff on how to butcher the fish. So then Bloomberg does a really nice job, I think, of going through and just kind of like taking the past to the present. Like they look at Julia Childs in the '60s as like the original, not YouTube chef, but content creator for like how-to videos. But something that stood out to me was the monthly uploads of food and drink videos that they share. Basically, these have shot up from 171,000 in January 2024 to 315,000 in June 2025. In a 2023 post on its Culture and Trends channel, YouTube attributed 80 billion views in the first 11 months of the year to videos from street food heavyweights such as Roy Choi of Los Angeles-based Kogi Barbecue. So like videos such as that. And basically, the article doesn't come at it as a sense of like, oh, like people are using it to get views. Well, there is some of that like popularity rising, but more so it's becoming a place where people are learning through culinary school. They're in lieu of a culinary school, they're kind of building their chef repertoire, as we would say here, and being able to just kind of establish themselves as chefs, or at least their reputations, or learning through a very easy way. And they're actually thinking that YouTube may soon be eclipsed. They're thinking that TikTok is even going to be something where a lot of the next generation of chefs are going to find out how to carve or how to, butcher a fish, how to make a hollandaise. So like when I was reading this, I thought it was interesting for two things. Like obviously you being pretty successful on YouTube and having, both the reviews, the dining out pieces, the how-tos, the more operations based stuff. Like you obviously can speak to that. What I wonder and what I've often questioned, this is like a culinary school conversation and then just a conversation in general. If you can, it's always this idea of like you need to go to what restaurants in order to be a great chef. If you're able to service as a private chef or just service as a content creator chef, and you can learn from YouTube and then reenact those dishes or learn that and then create your own small private chef business like we talked about 2 weeks ago, like you almost skip the restaurant portion of that. You almost skip the culinary school portion of that. So it's almost like there's branching paths in the food industry for a chef where it's like, obviously there's a lot of diversity, but if you're like looking at a chef, as we know, is in a restaurant or a creator, there's the go work in restaurants, go to culinary school, learn all those and apply it to your content and to how you're on YouTube, or use YouTube, use TikTok and online free media to build your career and your reputation while also learning consistently. So just your thoughts on this idea of the insanely, the growing popularity of not only food content, but people utilizing it to get a culinary education.
I love this story. I was taking notes as you were chatting here. So the first dot point that I wrote down was traditional culinary schools, even books to a certain extent. There was two almost hurdles that either prevented people from using those as resources or that allowed those, let's call them institutions, scapegoat culinary schools as an example here, which was like they arbitraged information or knowledge. And so it was this idea that in order to learn this, it was gate kept behind. You and I both went to CIA, and it was like, if you want to learn about these techniques, if you want to work with this type of, equipment, if you want to get these insights from these professors, you have to go to this physical location and then along the way pay tens of thousands of dollars to get this. And they made a ton of money on that arbitrage, because where else were you going to get that information in an era when spreading that knowledge, publishing, quote unquote, was not widely accessible to the masses, number one. And what I want to add as a caveat there that I think is really, really important, I can imagine you experienced this too at culinary school, Ray, was there's a difference between like information and experience. And I think sometimes people have those examples or anecdotes when it's like, well, knowledge or wisdom is the confluence of both of those things together. We can debate that in the comments maybe. But what I want to caution people against, and I say this in all of our programs too that we have on the website, is just because we give you the information, it is not a substitute for experience. And you really, really, really need to keep that in mind as you watch somebody make a really beautiful biryani, or somebody teaches you how to make tacos al pastor, or someone teaches you this cool pastry technique. And it's like you've seen it, but in a lot of these contexts, when they're showing you this with this flashy cinematography and it's edited together, and maybe they've taken out some of the blunders or mistakes, or they don't even talk about those mistakes, because I know as a budding content creator myself, I did not want to be seen as someone who didn't have quote unquote the answers. And so if I messed up on camera, I was for sure going to edit that out and make sure that you only saw the pristine example of, whatever it is that I was creating. And I kind of documented the process when I was doing like dish of the day stuff, when I would, at the end of the dish, when I would present it in two ways. I would say, I don't know what the right answer is for whatever I just did. Is it this one or is it this one? I don't necessarily know. And then, I kind of use that in a little way to get engagement, but it was almost to transparently and vulnerably talk about the fact that just because I made this thing doesn't mean it's like, it's finished. And so you got to really be careful as you're watching some of these channels to take the right lessons away, which leads me into the next point that I wrote down as you were going on that rant was, just-in-time information versus just-in-case information. And so you might have, a collaboration coming up where a Japanese chef is going to come to the restaurant and they're going to collaborate with you on the menu. And you're like, oh man, I know nothing about, the type of Japanese cuisine that this person specializes in. I think it's amazing that you can go on the internet and go to YouTube University and basically get at least a basic 101 understanding of, how rice is seasoned, or how to slice fish, or, insert Japanese pickling, or like insert the topic. That I think is really, really awesome. And it kind of leads into that experience idea where just because you have the 101 understanding doesn't mean you are now an expert, or you now have the ability to, again, to your point, that could be the just-in-time information piece. So as an example, just to make it really concrete for people, you might spend a stint working at, a, fast casual, or maybe like a little bit more upscale sit-down Italian spot, and you have desires to do that in people's homes. Can you actually take a little bit of insights from some YouTube videos that you're going to watch and then have those be the thing that ultimately give you at least a base to get your first few clients? And then you can use that. Like, you almost want to combine it with other things is maybe what I'm trying to say. Don't look at this, these educational YouTube videos in isolation and say, cool, don't need you, middle finger to this. I'm just going to do it on my own. Because it kind of turns into this thing where you get what you pay for, and I'm not even talking about that from a financial sense. It's like if you don't, that's why we use the language pay your dues in some way, shape, or form, because that's like proof of work almost. When you go into these environments and you're forced to think on your feet and you get pushed outside of your comfort zone, that's actually where the learning happens, and that's where the experience comes into play. And it is this funny thing where you see this sometimes with like these recipe apps or these recipe libraries that people get asked, access to. You get all of the recipes downloaded onto your phone, and it's like, cool, does that give you the ability to open a concept now? Not necessarily, right? Like, there's still a bunch of other things that you have to, tackle there. I also am kind of giving myself like a pseudo pat on the back, because there was a time, I don't know, man, this is like 2017, right? As I was coming back from Europe, where I was like, man, everybody's telling me if I'm going to make content on YouTube, I should do recipes. And I saw it from the jump that it was going to be a commodity. It was going to turn into this thing where everybody, because the information is like, it is a recipe. There is, by definition, a structured way to do it, and all you have to do is follow the instructions. And that's not to downplay the process that goes into making some of these videos, because I know it's super hard. I've had seasons where I've made recipe-style content before. It's not easy. But it turns into this thing where people either have to get attached to your personality, you have to have incredible tenacity and persistence to show up and make that kind of content to have a successful channel, or you got to like fold it into something else. Like, you see the Joshua Weissmans of the world, like he has 2 channels now, for those that aren't aware. He has his main channel where it's almost like Josh's cooking travel series, where he'll go and try all the different chicken sandwiches around the US. And now he has a Joshua Weissman's recipe channel, because he realized that like these are 2 very different, like needs and audiences. And even when we look in our YouTube dashboard, there's a whole tab now called Inspiration, where we can click into it and people can say, these are topics that people are searching for, but they aren't being served enough, which I think also ties into this idea we've covered on the show before of why does traditional culinary school education have to start with classic French cuisine? And it's like, this is maybe the antidote to that. It's like the CIAs of the world are not going to totally rejig their curriculum. So can you supplement whatever you're getting with something else from something like YouTube? And then the last thing, I'll kind of tie it up with a bow here, is like, what do you do with all of this information now? And that's why we call both the show and the company repertoire, because it's this idea of like, you can have stuff in your repertoire and know how to do it, but it is context dependent what you decide to whip out and use. And I think that's the important piece here, where you can almost have this information overload and you'll be like, I know how to do so many things, and that actually makes it paradoxically hard to decide what you're going to do, instead of just, you know, like digging your heels in a little bit and saying, I'm going to become really, really, really good at this thing that I know the market wants, that I know has the potential to be profitable, that I know I can actually deliver on. That to me is the more interesting insight. I don't know, what did you think after, you know, you've come up with some of this culinary education too?
I agree with you, and I think like I've done some reflecting. I'm now at a point where, let's see, 17, 20. I'm probably 50-50 on my time spent working in restaurants as compared to spending in like food manufacturing and R&D. And I can tell you that the 5 years I spent, or 7 years, I don't know, the length of time I spent from working at Wendy's in high school to working for restaurants during the middle of COVID, like that time has served me so well, and jumpstarted and enhanced my abilities so well in food manufacturing and R&D, in a way that like if I didn't have it, there'd be so many things that I think I'd be bad at or not like be as proficient at. So like I agree, you need that experience in some way. It doesn't have to be like, and I've said this a ton of times, it doesn't have to be in like a fine dining restaurant, but I do think you need that experience. I think the other thing, like if you're going to start a food business based off of your knowledge of YouTube, is like, that's all great that like you learn recipes, but I think food safety is a big thing that isn't touched in a lot of these recipe videos. They're cool. You're
Managing people is not
and
covered.
like,
It's
even if you do a
it's
private chef gig and it's just you, like, do you understand how to cook all this right temperature? Do you understand how to keep it cold? Do you understand how to like make sure it's safe when you like, so all of that stuff, and like that's all important too. But I just think it's interesting because I think we're gonna sit here and say that, but I think there's gonna be a lot of people that take the route of finding that experience and just going through YouTube. And I'm not downplaying them. Like I think however people can be entrepreneurial in the food space, like obviously go for it. But it's just gonna be interesting to see. I think it's gonna create like too many industries in like the next 10 years. We'll see what happens.
I think an interesting way to think about it is you have to pay for that experience in some way, shape, or form. I have a hard time thinking of examples where there's no way around it. So just as an example, I get really excited about Moroccan cuisine, and I'm going to go down a YouTube rabbit hole and I'm going to watch all this stuff and I'm going to open my own place. A way to potentially thought exercise this for yourself is, if I go work for somebody else who has even a tangentially related concept, it doesn't have to be exactly the cuisine that you're doing. You might not think of it in the moment, but you're getting paid to learn those lessons. And that is drastically different from you taking out a line of credit from a bank, asking for money from friends and family to, you know, invest in your concept that might, you know, potentially faceplant. And I think experience gets this bad rap sometimes because it takes time. In this world of, you've covered this on the show multiple times, like GLP-1s, the pill that's going to make you more focused, the sleep hack that's going to, you know, revolutionize your health. It's like there's a shortcutness to it all. And I think that is so alluring to people, where it's like, oh man, I don't have to spend 8 years doing XYZ thing. Yeah. And what I just want people to be aware of is the fact that there actually are benefits to the quote unquote old way. And you have to kind of acknowledge some of the side effects that come with this quote unquote new way that I don't think we've technically seen. And then I reflect on, I don't know if you're familiar with, did you watch the Avicii documentary?
No, it's on my list. I'm terrible at watching things, as you probably know.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm actually probably going to butcher this as I attempt to take my lessons away from this, but he is very much so a product of the internet, from his ability to take like, you know, music samples and stuff that he found online that was relatively open source and the software that was available at the time. And he was basically like, no, I don't need to go to the traditional path of a music artist. And I can basically like build my name, quote unquote, online. And I think the important thing for chefs to take away from this is like, music scales in a way that food does not. But I do think, regardless of how it looks, I do think that this next generation is looking and saying, I have different options. And even if they're able to achieve, you know, a 30% quote unquote time savings on their career and get to a profitable ownership state That's awesome. You know, I'm going to applaud that. I just want to caution and make sure that we're not having that Chesterton's fence problem that I've covered in previous shows, where you see an established guideline and you're like, I don't need this, and then you circumnavigate it and find that it was actually there for a
Yep.
reason.
I hear you.